Have you ever poured everything you had into people who were supposed to love you, only to find yourself standing outside their biggest moments, alone while they laughed inside? My name is Portia Wells. I am 34 years old. I run a successful event and logistics company in Atlanta, Georgia. I have one older brother, one younger sister, and a mother who always found a way to look the other way. And for most of my life I believed that if I just kept showing up, kept helping, kept giving, they would eventually see me. They never did. Until I made sure they felt exactly what I had been feeling for years. This is my story. And I promise you every detail matters. I was standing outside the Grand Ivory venue in heels that had started to hurt an hour ago. My dress was slightly wrinkled from the drive. I had a gift in my hand wrapped in ivory ribbon. I had been standing at those glass doors for 20 minutes. The security guard had checked his list 3 times. My name was not on it. Through the glass I could see my older sister Tara laughing in a white dress, surrounded by guests who all looked perfectly comfortable inside. I called her. She let it ring twice, then picked up. Her voice was soft and cold at the same time. Portia, please don't make this about you today. I told her I just wanted to understand why my name was not on the list. There was a pause. Then she said, "You were never really invited. Mom just didn't know how to tell you." I stood there. I could not move. Guests near the entrance glanced at me with that look. The one people give when they feel sorry for you but are glad it is not them. I turned to walk back to my car. That was when one of the bridesmaids, standing just inside the door, said quietly to another, "That's the sister they keep hidden." I sat in my car for a long time before I could drive. What I did not know yet was that this was not the first time. This was just the time I finally stopped pretending it was an accident. It started years before Tara's wedding at my older brother Wesley's. Wesley is 5 years older than me. When he got engaged to his college girlfriend Priya, I was genuinely excited. I stayed up late designing their invitations on my laptop. I built seating charts. I coordinated vendors. When Wesley said money was tight 2 weeks before the wedding, I paid for the centerpieces out of my own savings. Over $800 I had been setting aside for rent backup. I told myself that was what family did. On the wedding day I arrived early in my best dress. That was when the coordinator told me there was no seat assigned to me at any table. "Just float around and help," Wesley told me, barely looking up from his phone. During the family photo session, Priya's mother smiled at the photographer and said, "Can we do one without her?" Wesley said nothing. He looked at his shoes. I stepped back and stood behind the group until it was over. Later I found out every guest received a handwritten thank you note and a small gift bag. Every guest except me. I told myself it was wedding stress. I told myself Wesley was overwhelmed. I kept telling myself things that were not true because the truth was too heavy to carry at the time. I was wrong to do that. 2 years after Wesley's wedding, my younger sister Tara got engaged to a man named Felix. Tara is 3 years younger than me. She has always been the one the family called beautiful, charming, effortless. When she called me about her engagement, she cried on the phone. "I want you involved," she said, "because you always show up for me." Those words meant everything. I believed her completely. Over the next several months, I planned her entire bachelorette weekend in Savannah. I picked up bridesmaids' dresses from 3 different boutiques across the city. I covered 2 vendor deposits temporarily, while she sorted her finances, totaling almost $1,200 she never paid back. I babysat her future stepchildren twice so she and Felix could attend venue tours. I rearranged my work schedule 4 times. I answered her 3 in the morning calls about flower arrangements. Then 2 weeks before the ceremony she called me again. Her voice was different this time. Casual. Almost bored. "So I've been thinking about the bridal party lineup," she said. "I need the photos to look a certain way." She told me I did not match the aesthetic anymore. She was replacing me with Felix's cousin. But she still needed me to manage the guest check-in table on the wedding day. My chest tightened. But I said yes. Because I still believed peace was more important than dignity. The morning of Tara's wedding I woke up at 5. I arrived at the venue before most of the vendors. I set up the check-in table, arranged the name cards, organized the gift display, and made sure every early guest was greeted warmly. I wore a plain blue dress that Tara had approved because she said it would not distract from her color theme. I smiled all day. Then around cocktail hour, one of Felix's relatives walked up to me while I was refilling the card box. He was pleasant enough. He asked how I knew the bride. Before I could answer, Tara appeared beside him and laughed. Oh, she's basically my assistant. The man nodded and moved on. I stood completely still for a moment. Later, near the dinner tables, I overheard Tara telling a group of her sorority friends, "She means well, but she's always been a lot." They laughed softly and moved on to the next topic. By 9 that evening, I had not eaten a proper meal. I had been on my feet for 14 hours. The family took photos near the cake table and nobody called me over. I went to the bathroom and sat on the closed toilet seat in the last stall for a few minutes. I pressed my hands against my knees. I told myself I was fine. I was not fine. The week after Tara's wedding, I drove to my mother's house in Decatur. My mother, Beverly, is the kind of woman who always has a soft explanation for hard behavior. She is elegant, image-conscious, and very good at making you feel like your pain is your own fault. I asked her calmly why it kept happening. Why I was always the one helping but never the one belonging. She tilted her head the way she does when she is preparing a careful answer. "Portia, you're too sensitive. Nobody is excluding you." I asked her about the photo at Wesley's wedding. She waved her hand. That was just Priya's mother being nervous. I told her about Tara calling me an assistant in front of guests. Beverly sighed. They just didn't want any drama. You have a way of making important moments feel messy. I sat very still when she said that. Messy. I had spent years cleaning up their messes. I had paid their deposits, managed their guests, fixed their timelines, and carried their stress. And somehow the conclusion they had all reached was that I was the problem. Something shifted in me that afternoon. Not into anger exactly. Into clarity. I had not imagined any of it. I had been quietly and deliberately assigned a role in this family, and that role was never sister. It was always backup. Once I saw the pattern, I could not unsee it. I started going back through my memories with new eyes. Wesley only called when his car broke down or his landlord was threatening him. Tara only texted warmly when she needed someone to watch her stepkids or cover something she had overspent on. Beverly only praised me in front of others when it made her look generous. I had been invited to exactly 0 of their group vacations over the past 6 years. I had been left out of the sibling group chat. I only found out it existed when Tara accidentally mentioned a conversation I was not part of. I was never included in holiday planning. I was only consulted when my skills, money, or availability were needed. The worst part was not the exclusion itself. It was how dependable they found me anyway. I was reliable enough to be used but not valued enough to be included. They counted on my showing up precisely because they knew I cared. And they had mistaken my caring for weakness for so long that they had stopped pretending otherwise. I made a quiet decision sitting in my apartment one evening. I was not going to chase them anymore. I was going to let the distance grow, just enough to see what they would do with it. What they did with it eventually was come running. Wesley's marketing business began losing clients in early 2022. He had overextended himself on office space and hired too fast. He called me every other week, warmer than he had been in years, asking questions about vendor contracts and cash flow management. My company, Wells Flow Events and Logistics, had grown steadily since I launched it 3 years earlier. I had built a reputation for high-end corporate events and destination weddings. My siblings had mocked it when I started. Wesley called it a fancy party planning hobby. Tara said she did not understand why I needed a business for something any organized person could do for free. Beverly told her friends I was still figuring things out. Now Wesley wanted introductions to my vendor network. Tara was struggling financially after overspending on her first anniversary trip and asked if I could manage a small pop-up event for her influencer page at a discount. I helped. I was professional, warmly distant, and asked for nothing extra. But I noticed something new in how they spoke to me. For the first time they were careful. Not loving, careful. They were beginning to understand that I was not fragile or forgettable. I had simply been patient. His name was Tobias. I met him at a vendor coordination meeting in the spring of 2022. He was calm the way deep water is calm, still on the surface but full of movement underneath. He asked thoughtful questions and listened in a way that felt rare. We started meeting for coffee to discuss a shared project. Then dinner. Then long weekend calls. He was not flashy. He did not perform. He just showed up consistently and honestly, and that alone felt like something I had never had before. About 4 months into dating, he came with me to Beverly's birthday dinner. I had warned him gently that my family was complicated. He nodded and said he understood. He did not understand, not yet. That evening, Beverly interrupted me 3 times mid-sentence. Wesley spent most of dinner talking about his business recovery. Tara made a joke about how I had always been chronically single, and then looked surprised when she noticed Tobias beside me. He reached under the table and held my hand. He did not say anything. He just held it. On the drive home he was quiet for a few minutes. Then he said, "They talk about you like you're a guest in your own family." I looked out the window. "I know," I said. "I've known for a long time." It was a Sunday dinner at Beverly's house about 3 months later. Tobias and I had been together for 7 months by then, and things between us had grown into something solid and real. I mentioned casually that we had been looking at venues, not for anything immediate, just thinking ahead. The table went quiet in a strange way. Then Tara said with a small laugh, "Wow. I didn't think you were the marrying type." I set down my fork. Tobias looked at her without blinking. Wesley recovered quickly and said, "Marriage is just different when you've had a certain reputation." Beverly changed the subject so fast it was almost impressive. I did not cry. I did not defend myself. I excused myself to refill my water and stood in the kitchen for 30 seconds. When I came back, Tobias was talking calmly about something unrelated, but his jaw was tight. Later that night he sat across from me at my kitchen table and said, "I've been watching them for months. They don't want you to grow. Every time you get closer to something good, they say something to make you smaller." I nodded. I had known it for years. But something about hearing it from someone who chose to love me made it feel like permission to finally stop shrinking. Tobias proposed on a quiet Tuesday evening in November. No audience, no performance. He had cooked dinner in my apartment, and after we ate he pulled a small ring box from his jacket pocket and said, "I want to build something real with you." I said yes before he finished the sentence. The next evening I called Beverly and told her. There was a pause. She said, "That was fast. Not congratulations. Not I'm so happy for you. That was fast." I called Wesley next. He asked how expensive the ring was. I called Tara last. She asked where we were thinking of having the wedding, not with excitement but with a measuring tone, like she was calculating something. That night I was in Beverly's living room dropping off some paperwork when she stepped away to answer her phone. Her iPad was sitting open on the side table. I was not looking for anything. But the screen was bright and a message in a group chat caught my eye immediately. The chat was named Fam Main, and I was not in it. The most recent message was from Tara. It said, "This is going to be a disaster." I stood very still. Then I looked more carefully at the screen. I read as quickly as I could. There were months of messages. Screenshots of my social media posts with mocking captions. A voice note from Wesley where he laughed about a photo from Tara's wedding and said they should have cropped me out entirely for aesthetic reasons. A message from Tara that said, "If she ever gets married, I give it 6 months." Beverly had replied with a laughing emoji. Then more. Jokes about my business, bets about whether Tobias would stay, a conversation about how to handle the wedding invitation, so it doesn't become a whole thing. I took photos of every visible message with my phone, moving quickly before Beverly came back. I sat in my car afterward and breathed carefully. I was not surprised. That was the strangest part. It felt more like confirmation than discovery. Everything I had sensed but second-guessed for years was now documented. They had been performing family while building a private theater of contempt. I drove home, uploaded the photos to a secure folder and sat at my desk for a long time. I was not going to react emotionally. I was going to respond strategically. And I was going to do it in a way they would never forget. I planned my wedding in complete silence. No family group updates. No casual mentions of venues or colors over dinner. No requests for opinions on dresses or flowers. When Beverly asked about catering, I smiled and said we were still deciding. When Tara fished for details about the guest list, I told her we were keeping it intimate. When Wesley asked who was paying, I said we had it handled. Every question got a warm, vague answer. Meanwhile, Tobias and I built something extraordinary in private. We chose a beautiful venue outside Chattanooga. Elegant, tucked into the hills with warm lighting and open gardens. His family was warm, loud in the best way, and completely unbothered by logistics I could handle in my sleep. For the first time, wedding planning felt peaceful. There was no performance. No approval seeking. No one assigning themselves importance they had not earned. We invited close friends, Tobias's family, and a few trusted relatives on my side, including my Aunt Clara, who had always treated me with genuine love. My family received invitations. Just not the kind they were imagining. Beverly called me in January and said she wanted to host a family planning dinner. I went. I sat at her dining table with Wesley, Tara, and two aunts on Beverly's side and listened as my mother began assigning wedding roles with the confidence of someone who believed the event belonged to her. Tara as maid of honor. Wesley to give a speech. Beverly to welcome guests on arrival. Two aunts to manage the decor. She said it all as if reading from a list she had already laminated. When she finished, I folded my hands on the table and said calmly, "Actually, none of that is happening." Silence. Tara laughed first, the short, dismissive laugh she used when she thought I was performing. "Be serious, Portia." "I am," I said. "There will be no bridal party from my side of the family. No speeches unless I approve the content in writing. No planning access. No extra guests added to the list without my direct confirmation. No surprise traditions." I watched their faces move through confusion, then offense, then something that looked almost like fear. Tara opened her mouth. Beverly touched her arm. Wesley stared at the table. I picked up my purse, thanked Beverly for dinner and drove home. 3 weeks later, a vendor called me. She managed floral arrangements and had worked with me professionally before. She said she had received a call from someone claiming to be me, requesting a significant change to the flower order, switching the entire palette and reducing the budget by 40%. She had thought the voice sounded off, which was why she called to confirm. I thanked her, told her to disregard the change request, and asked her to flag any future calls not made from my direct number. Then I checked 2 other vendors. A second one had received a similar call. A third had been told the wedding date had shifted by 3 weeks. I pulled the contact logs my vendors kept on file. The calls had come from a number I recognized immediately. It was Tara's. I did not call her. I did not text her. I saved every piece of documentation, the vendor notes, the dates, the call logs, and forwarded everything to my attorney and to Tobias. That evening, Tobias sat beside me and asked one question: "Are you okay?" I thought about it honestly. "I'm not upset," I said. "I'm ready." He nodded. He had understood for months what I was only now fully stepping into. That some people only stop when they finally feel the weight of their own behavior. Tobias asked me one question a few nights later that changed how I was thinking about everything. We were sitting on the back porch of his house. He looked at me and said, "Why are you still trying to give people front row access to your life when they've only used it to hurt you?" I did not answer right away. I sat with it. The honest answer was that I had spent so long hoping they would change that I had built a habit out of leaving the door open. Every time they hurt me, I had told myself they just needed more time, more grace, more of me. But that was not generosity. That was a loop. That night, Tobias and I made a private decision. My family would still receive invitations to the wedding. But those invitations would carry a very specific set of instructions. Instructions they would not see coming. I wanted them there. Not for their comfort. Not for appearances. I wanted them there because some lessons only land when you are present for them. And I had spent years being the only one who learned anything in this family. It was time to share the education. The invitations I sent to my family were beautiful. Heavy cream cardstock with gold lettering, professionally printed, delivered in elegant envelopes with wax seals. Beverly called me within an hour of receiving hers. Her voice was warm in the way it only got when she thought she was winning something. "It's gorgeous, Portia. Absolutely gorgeous." Tara posted a photo of the envelope on her Instagram story with a caption that said, "Supporting family always." Wesley told a cousin he would probably keep things moving on the day, implying a coordination role nobody had offered him. Beverly went shopping and bought a dramatic champagne gown with a long train. She told Aunt Clara she planned to sit in the front row. They had all decided without asking what their role in my wedding day would be. They walked around for 2 weeks carrying the confidence of people who believed they had secured center stage. I let them think that. I focused on the final details of the plan instead. There were things I needed to confirm with the venue coordinator. There were envelopes to prepare. There were staff to brief. And there was one trusted aunt who needed to be told exactly what was happening and why, because what came next required someone on the inside. 8 days before the wedding, Aunt Clara called me. Her voice was careful and a little breathless, the way it gets when she has been carrying something heavy and finally decides to put it down. She told me she had been in a voice note thread with Beverly, Wesley, and Tara earlier that week. She said she needed me to hear it. She sent me 3 recordings. I sat at my kitchen table and listened to all of them twice. In the first, Wesley laughed about the speech he was going to give anyway, whether she approves it or not. In the second, Tara said she had found an old photo of me from a company event where I had been visibly stressed and was planning to show it during reception. She said, she wants this perfect day so badly. It'll be funny when reality hits. In the third, Beverly discussed the champagne gown again and said she intended to stand near the front of every photo. Then Tara added, if she cries, she cries. At least it'll be memorable. I closed the voice notes. I did not feel rage. I felt something cooler and more final than rage. I had given them every opportunity. I had hoped over and over that love would eventually look like love. It never did. So I activated the plan completely. My wedding day in April was clear and warm, with a light wind coming through the garden. The venue looked exactly as I had imagined. Soft white draping, warm lanterns, garden roses in cream and blush, everything quiet and intentional. Tobias's family arrived early and filled the space with laughter and genuine warmth. My close friends were already inside when my family arrived. Beverly appeared first, champagne gown trailing, scanning the entrance with the expression of someone expecting to be announced. Wesley came in behind her with his hands in his pockets, looking around like he was mentally calculating where he would stand. Tara walked slightly ahead of Felix, her eyes moving fast across the room, searching for her name on a seating card or a program. They were greeted at the entrance by the venue coordinator, a calm professional named Ms. Adiz, who smiled warmly and asked for their names. He checked her list. Then she said with complete politeness, "Right this way, please." She did not take them toward the ceremony seats. She did not take them toward the bridal suite. She walked them to a beautifully decorated side hospitality room with its own seating, flowers, and refreshments. Their names were not in the ceremony program. No family roles were listed beside them. Ms. Adiz handed Beverly an envelope and excused herself quietly. Beverly looked at the envelope like it might bite her. Inside the envelope was a letter I had written myself. No lawyer. No drama. Just my words, clear and final. It said, 4 years I was excluded from your most important moments. Not accidentally but deliberately. I was used when you needed something and hidden when you wanted to look a certain way. I was called too sensitive when I noticed and too much when I asked for basic dignity. Today is my most important moment. And I have decided to honor everything you taught me about belonging. Then it said, you are welcome here as guests. But you will have no access to the bridal suite, no authority over any part of this day, no spotlight and no role I have not assigned. This is not cruelty. This is consistency. At the bottom was a single line. You taught me exactly where I belong in your life. Today I am honoring that. Attached behind the letter were printed screenshots. The group chat messages. The vendor call logs. The voice note transcriptions. Not for public display. Just enough so they knew with absolute certainty that I knew everything. The room was quiet for almost a full minute after Beverly finished reading. Tara moved first. She came out of the hospitality room fast, her heels loud on the stone floor, and she made it about 15 steps toward the ceremony garden before 2 members of the venue security team stepped calmly into her path. They did not touch her. They simply stood there and said the ceremony area was currently closed to general guests until the processional began. Tara's voice climbed. She said there had been a mistake. She said she was the bride's sister. The coordinator appeared again and said very kindly that the seating arrangement was final and that she would be happy to show her back to the hospitality room. Beverly had come out by then too, dabbing her eyes dramatically, searching for someone to perform at. Wesley stood in the doorway of the hospitality room with his arms crossed, trying to look unbothered. Felix, to his credit, stayed seated and said nothing. Several guests near the garden entrance turned to look. A cousin of Tobias's leaned over to his wife and whispered something. The thing about a scene is that it only works when it embarrasses the target. Tara had not understood that the target today was not me. I was inside, calm with flowers in my hair, about to marry someone who had never once made me feel hidden. The moment that changed the atmosphere completely came from someone nobody expected. My great-uncle Silas, Beverly's own uncle in his late 70s, a man who had always stayed neutral in every family conflict, walked slowly out of the ceremony garden and into the hallway where Beverly and Tara were still causing tension. He looked at them both for a moment. Then he said loudly enough for the nearby guests to hear, "She is not doing anything to you that you didn't do to her for years." The hallway went very quiet. He turned and walked back inside. What followed was a kind of unraveling that I only heard about later from Aunt Clara. Relatives began speaking. An older cousin admitted she had always noticed how I was treated at family events. One of Beverly's church friends said she had been told not to invite me to a birthday trip 3 years earlier. A second cousin said she always thought it was strange how I was never in the family photos that got posted online. Beverly stopped crying and went still. Tara sat down. The carefully maintained image, the loving family with one difficult member, had been standing on a foundation of silence for years. Silas had simply said one sentence and the silence finally broke. Aunt Clara found me just before the processional. She took both my hands and told me she had something for me. She reached into her bag and pulled out a small envelope, worn at the edges, clearly old. She said my father, who passed away when I was 19, had given it to her years before he died. He had told her to give it to me when I finally had my wedding day. I stood in the small anteroom off the garden and opened it carefully. His handwriting was familiar and painful and warm all at once. He had written, "Portia, I know how this family works. I have watched it your whole life and I have not always been strong enough to stop it. But I need you to know one thing clearly. You were never the problem. You were always the one worth knowing. One day they will realize your value too late. Don't let anyone make you beg for a seat where you were born to belong. Walk in like you own it. Because in every way that matters, you do." I stood there for a long time. Aunt Clara held my hand without speaking. I had spent 15 years missing my father. But in that moment, standing in a garden in April with flowers in my hair and a man waiting who loved me completely, I felt him with me. The anger left. What replaced it was not sadness. It was something lighter and stronger. The feeling of finally being free. The ceremony was the most beautiful hour of my life. Tobias stood at the end of the aisle with tears already in his eyes before I had taken 3 steps. His family filled the seats with warmth. My close friends sat in the front row and cried at the right moments. Aunt Clara sat beside great-uncle Silas, both of them glowing. The officiant was a woman Tobias and I had chosen together, and her words were honest and personal and nothing like a script. We wrote our own vows. I told Tobias that he had shown me what it looked like when love did not require performance. He told me I was the most quietly powerful person he had ever known. When it was over, everyone stood. Nobody was missing. Nobody needed to be. The family photos were taken in the garden afterward with the people who had shown up for us. Not just that day but in all the days before it. Not a single frame felt incomplete. My family, sitting in the hospitality room with a letter and a set of screenshots, were not in those photos. And for the first time in my adult life I did not notice the absence. I only noticed how full everything felt. The messages started that evening while Tobias and I were at the welcome dinner with our guests. Beverly texted first. "We need to talk about what happened today. You embarrassed this family." Wesley sent a voice note I did not open until the following morning. Tara sent 3 messages in a row. The first angry, the second wounded, the third ending with, "After everything we've done for you." 2 days later the tone shifted. Beverly called and said she missed me. Tara texted something about moving forward. Wesley sent a long message about how families go through hard seasons. I read each one carefully. I thought about the group chat, the voice notes, the vendor calls, the decade of weddings I had been used for and shut out of. I thought about my father's letter. Then I responded to all of them calmly and clearly. I told them I was open to peace. Genuinely open to it. But peace required something they had not offered yet. Accountability. Honest acknowledgement, not management. Changed behavior, not better performance. Real relationship, not access to what I could provide. Beverly did not respond after that. Wesley said I was being harsh. Tara said I was punishing them. I was not punishing anyone. I was simply no longer rearranging myself to make their comfort easier than their growth. 3 months after the wedding, Wesley came to my door alone. No call ahead. He stood on my porch looking like someone who had been carrying something too heavy for too long and had finally decided to put it down. I let him in. He sat at my kitchen table and looked at his hands. Then he said, "We treated you like you were lucky to be included in a family you were carrying." I let that sit in the air. He said more, about the group chat, about the weddings, about the way they had all agreed without ever speaking it directly, that I was the family member who did not quite fit the image they wanted. He said Megan's circle, the friends who had pushed the behavior, had drifted away when consequences arrived. He said Beverly was in her own process. He said Tara was not ready yet, but that was her work to do. I listened to all of it. When he was done, I told him the truth. I told him that what I did on my wedding day was not revenge for the pleasure of it. It was the one moment I had full control over, and I used it to show them what it felt like to stand outside a door that was open to everyone else. To feel welcome in name only. To smile and help and still not belong. I told him the lesson was never about winning. It was about making sure the feeling was finally shared. If you have ever poured yourself into people who treated you like furniture, I want you to hear this clearly. Your value does not depend on their recognition. Building quietly while they underestimate you is not weakness. It is strategy. Leaving a door open for people who only use it to walk through and take from you is not love. It is a habit you can choose to break. And sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is simply believe people the first time they show you who they are. And build your life accordingly. If this story moved you, please like this video and leave a comment below. Share it with someone who needs to hear it. And if you have not subscribed to this channel yet, please do. There are more stories like this one coming and you do not want to miss them. Thank you for watching. Thank you for staying until the end. You are exactly the kind of person this channel is made for.